Hey everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day so far. Again, maybe it's better than Katie Joy's. Today is October 17th. As I record this, I don't know if that's when this video will actually be uploaded, but it is also the day that Katie Joy Paulson has a hearing with 7M, Robert Shen, Miranda Derrick, and James Derrick for her defamation case. It is scheduled for 3 p.m. and, of course, Katie Joy can't just stay quiet about it and deal with her legal issues behind the scenes. She has to take to social media, make a post asking people for help, stating help needed, and deep breaths. We'll look at this post in detail here in a bit, but let's catch up on where we're at, what this hearing is, and all the shenanigans that Katie Joy has been up to over the past few weeks. So let's get into it, y'all. Let's take a look at some of the filings that have been filed in this case recently. And y'all, I really do. As time goes on, I personally, just my opinion, I feel that Katie Joy Paulson might be totally screwed in this entire situation. Mainly because she can't keep her mouth shut, but yeah, mainly because she can't keep her mouth shut. So let's look at a few things that have happened within the past few weeks. But as a reminder, Katie Joy Paulson is being sued by 7M Films, Robert Shen, Miranda Derrick, and James Derrick for defamation. Both parties filed a motion for summary judgment, which at the time the judge granted in part, and it was to head to trial. Katie Joy's team requested that they be able to contest this, basically, and the judge actually granted their motion, allowing Katie Joy Paulson to file a motion to reconsider. And this is that order that was filed on July 10th, permitting Katie Joy to file a motion to reconsider the court's June 23rd, 2025 order granting in part and denying in part motions for summary judgment. And she had 30 days from July 10th to file that motion to reconsider. It says 7M has 21 days to respond to the motion, and then Katie Joy can respond 14 days after that. But it says here, defendants shall contact court administration to schedule a live hearing if they desire oral argument on the motion. And Katie Joy's team did do that. They did request a hearing. Then shortly after this, we saw a hearing that was scheduled for October 17th of 2025. So before we saw that notice of hearing, of course, the next step was Katie to file that motion to reconsider that this judge did permit her to do. And that motion was filed on August 15th, 2025. And then, of course, 7M filed their motion in opposition for Katie Joy's motion for reconsideration, and that was filed on September 5th. Now, I did a video covering both of these, talking about the motion for reconsideration. We went over the filings in this video, which is still up on the channel. After those motions, out of nowhere, it seemed pretty much out of nowhere, 7M filed a motion for temporary injunctive relief. Now, this motion for temporary injunction set off something in Katie Joy. It pissed her off to no end. And she could not help herself, as we all know, and she had to talk about it. So she goes to Instagram, I guess, looking for sympathy. I mean, I don't understand. You're in current litigation. Now they're filing a motion because you are saying a lot of defamatory things. Katie Joy, as we know, she tells her people differently. She tries to say that it's a whole different situation than what it truly is. But nonetheless, they filed this motion for injunction. And not only is Katie now talking about Robert Shen, Miranda, and James, now she's trashing Amber Stabig, who is the attorney for 7M, saying things like she has the audacity to file a 25-page motion accusing her of harming, accusing Katie of harming Robert's reputation by spreading quote-unquote false and defamatory statements. Well, I guess it was only 20 pages, but anyway. she then slanders Amber Stavig some more by saying she's not only enabling Robert Shen by refusing to withdraw this entire lawsuit, but then she goes on to discuss Amber Stavig's health issues, and not only that, says that she lied about them and that she should be able to talk about whatever she wants to talk about whenever she wants to, because he is under investigation. And because he is under investigation, she's not the bad one. She continued to knock Amber Stavig by saying that she mistreated her during her deposition and that it had no relevance, whatever. And, that after after 3.5 years, she's done, y'all. Katie Joy is done. She is seeking sanctions for the repeated abuse of the court, and she is done with their intimidation. So she's been saying that Robert Shen has been abusing the court by trying to silence Katie Joy, and he's trying to take her down outside of everyone else because she's the easiest target. You can just see her anger in these posts. And again, you're in current litigation. Why are you even posting this stuff? But this was in response to the motion for a temporary injunction. And, just saying things that she's not going to settle, she's going to fight this to the end. Well, she didn't have an option to settle. Robert Shen was never going to settle this with her. And she's saying that she's fighting because the truth matters. Now, you're fighting because you're being sued and you don't have a way out of it. And instead of stopping your defamation and saying all of these things that you're stating as fact, that 7M is more than likely going to be able to prove that, number one, they're not fact, but that you knew that you were saying these things that were not truthful. Therefore, that's malicious intent, the whole basis behind a defamation lawsuit. And she's saying that, she's standing up for all the other creators who might be sued by somebody. Not everybody defames people, Katie Joy. Some people stick with the facts. So that was her reaction, plus some more. There was more. In fact, I did a video on it. Here's a video that we talk about this motion for a temporary injunction. And it is still up on the channel as well, if you have not watched that yet. And when this motion for temporary injunction was filed, we were really looking for the motion that Katie was going to file replying to 7M's opposition to her motion to reconsider. So the day after this motion for temporary injunction was filed, we then see the filing that Katie Joy filed supporting her motion to reconsider. After that, on September 18th, this case was taken under advisement and there was a notice of hearing, and that notice of hearing was for the October 17th hearing, which is today. Again, I'm recording this on October 17th. When it gets uploaded, that's another thing. But it's scheduled for October 17th. This is the hearing for Katie's motion to reconsider. And 7M filed their motion for temporary injunction, asking the judge to also hear that on October 17th as well. But we also knew that Katie Joy was going to respond to 7M's motion for temporary injunction. So on September 25th, Katie Joy filed her motion opposing the motion for temporary injunction, along with supporting motion to strike affidavits and for sanctions for spoliation of evidence. And as I stated in the video whenever I went through the motion for temporary injunction, and I knew that Katie had just filed this response, I said I wasn't going to waste my time going through it. So I'm just going to hit some very key points here, mainly regarding what they are talking about, the affidavits, striking the affidavits, and then also spoliation of evidence. But one of Katie's key points is trying to say that this motion was a way for 7M to, quote unquote, smuggle in new evidence and to distract from their own discovery failures, because Katie's saying that, they failed to produce certain discovery, and to punish Katie Joy by silencing a journalist and multiplying her defense costs. So basically, they're trying to, according to Katie, not silence her for the reasons that she's defaming them, but because they want to punish her. And by continuing this litigation, it's going to keep costing Katie Joy a lot of money to fight it. one of the things I think is going to hurt Katie Joy in this case is the topic of Miranda and James Derek's marriage. Katie said from the very beginning they were not married. She fought it. She argued it, talked about that in other videos. She even admitted to it regarding that she was wrong about it in her summary judgment. But then when Robert was raided and she became bold and she thinks she's going to win this case now, she retracted that and now says that they weren't really married and that their marriage license was forged. And so Katie says here that 7M is arguing that Katie accused them of, quote unquote, forging documents and, quote unquote, coaching witnesses. In reality, the forged documents references were criticism of plaintiffs' litigation conduct, specifically their repeated practice, both in California and here, of submitting documents under plaintiff's signature that are neither sworn nor wet ink executed. That is a procedural defect, not an allegation of criminal forgery. Well, then I guess her attorney truly did not look at the exhibits that were included in the motion for temporary injunction because it included one of Katie's posts that is very, very clear that she is accusing them of forgery. And here is that post that Katie Joy made. And I blocked it out here because not only is there this accusation of forgery, she doxed someone all in the same post. Outside of that, this document, which is their marriage license, she received through discovery in this case. So not only is she accusing them of forgery and then denying it, she's doxing somebody publicly by putting out their address on a document she got through discovery in this case. This right here, y'all, I think is going to bite her in the ass if nothing else does. This one says, here's some evidence we obtained from public records, which is an absolute lie, which solidified our reporting, and it's never been released until now. Well, yeah, because it was never known until it was shown in discovery, which keep in mind, there is a protective order on discovery in this case for a reason. I don't think this particular document was considered attorney's eyes only, obviously, but this just goes to prove to the judge that there is a need for protective order in these situations, so Katie Joy cannot do shit like this. And then in this one, she says, because she did 2 posts about it, she did a few in her stories on Instagram. Based upon other legal signatures of Miranda Derrick, we are 90% confident her signature is forged on this marriage license. And then she did a post that was explaining the forgery. So for her attorney to say, no, she's not accusing them of forgery is absolute nonsense. It's crazy, y'all. They then carry on to say that plaintiffs know they cannot obtain an injunction, basically telling the judge how to do their job. They ask anyway, not to win, but to punish Katie Joy and to plant improper malice rhetoric in the record. The Constitution does not permit it, and this court should not indulge it. So again, telling the court that there shouldn't, you cannot grant this injunction. In regards to the irreparable harm and why 7M is seeking this temporary injunction, they say that plaintiff's discomfort at being criticized, even harshly, is not irreparable harm. Katie Joy has done a lot more than just criticize or even just putting out information about Robert Shin's federal investigation and the raid that was done at his home and other properties. It's way beyond that. And I think that they actually may be able to prove this to the judge in their motion. They actually say that plaintiffs chose to file this high-profile defamation lawsuit. So they're just supposed to allow Katie to say whatever she wants. We have to remember what she has done to Miranda and James Derrick alone. Again, plenty of videos on this channel to talk about that. But they say they placed their reputations squarely at issue. They cannot now demand immunity from the very debate they provoked. There was no provocation here. There is nothing that Miranda Derrick or James Derrick or Robert Shin has done to provoke anything that Katie Joy has said and done. And that specifically goes to when they sued her back in 2022. They didn't do anything to deserve what they did. And so therefore, they felt they needed to file a defamation lawsuit against Katie Joy. And that is why she's where she's at right now. I also just kind of find it funny they're calling it a debate. But one of the things that Katie Joy is really hammering down on is that Miranda and James Derrick both deleted their social media platforms. They yeeted themselves off of social media. And Katie Joy is saying by them doing that, they are deleting evidence. She's also saying in this motion that all the plaintiffs filed defective affidavits, and she's also asking that the court remove the protective order on discovery, particularly the attorney's eyes only. Because she says here, a party cannot delete social media accounts in the middle of a defamation case, submit defective affidavits, blanket designate everything, quote unquote, attorney's eyes only, and then cry malice when criticized. I want to acknowledge, of course, that I am not showing this filing from beginning to end, and I am not reading it. Now, I'm reading it in order. I'm going through it in order, but I'm not reading it verbatim from beginning to end. And I am skipping through it. I acknowledge that. This filing is available on the website where you can find all the filings in this lawsuit. But the gist of this is obviously their opposition to the motion for a temporary injunction, saying that 7M has filed it improperly and that they did not meet all the Dahlberg factors. But they're also arguing that they want the judge to remove the affidavits because they are improper. And so here it says, improper and non-compliant affidavits. In support of their motion for a temporary injunction, plaintiffs submitted affidavits from Miranda Derrick, James Derrick, Robert Shin, and their counsel, Amber Stabig. Each of those affidavits is procedurally defective and must be stricken. Katie even did a video about this, I believe, but she's saying that they left out the statement, I declare under penalty of perjury that everything I have stated in this document is true and correct. And here is James Derrick's affidavit. I'm just going to show this one. They all three were as such and signed in the same manner. And they do not state that they signed it under the penalty of perjury. And Katie is saying in this motion that because of that, they need to be stricken from the record altogether. But 7M did eventually refile all four affidavits, the three plaintiffs and Amber Stabig herself, and it was corrected. So Katie Joy respectfully requests the court strike in their entirety the affidavits of Miranda Derrick, James Derrick, Robert Shin, and Amber Stabig, because without competent affidavits, plaintiff's motion is unsupported and must be denied. So they are asking the court to deny 7M's motion for temporary injunction, stating that the affidavits are incorrect. They then discuss the deletion of evidence. And in my opinion, honestly, Katie Joy says that they deleted all of their accounts. They deleted everything. This is just my opinion. I could be wrong. I have a feeling that they didn't delete their accounts, that they're either on private or they're hidden. Regardless, Katie is saying they deleted it. But you'll see in Amber Stabig's response to this that no, the evidence is not deleted. And anything that was on their social media accounts is still available. If Katie Joy feels that she needs to see anything, it's still there. It's still available. So whether they deleted it or not, whether they choose to eventually come back or not, Katie Joy is trying to say that they intentionally deleted their social media accounts to win in this case somehow, to, elude everything and go against court orders. In the affidavits, though, they state that they deleted their social media presence. So semantics, I don't know. But we do know that they are not on social media. You cannot find Miranda or James on social media. And 7M is arguing that it is because of Katie Joy, that because of Katie Joy's reporting, if you want to call it that, that they have received so much hate, and therefore they wanted to just remove themselves from social media. But Katie Joy is saying, look, I'm not the only one that recognized that they deleted this. This is a topic. I'm not the only one that talks about Miranda and James Derrick. Look, People Magazine, Daily Mail, Enter Newscast Journal, they're all talking about how they deleted their social media, how James and Miranda deleted their social media. But to me, when you look at those articles, they're referring to the people of the Netflix docuseries Dancing for the Devil. If Miranda and James Derrick just deleted their social media accounts before the Netflix docuseries Dancing for the Devil, or if in a great world that docuseries was never put out by Netflix, and James and Miranda deleted their social media, do you think anybody would have recognized it? Do you think anybody would have spoke about it? Do you think there'd be articles about it? I don't know. But when they refer to Miranda and James Derrick now, it is James and Miranda Derrick of Dancing for the Devil, the TikTok cult, on Netflix. So you decide. Here they get to the argument of unreasonable confidentiality designations. Plaintiffs have designated virtually every document in this case as either confidential or highly confidential, attorney's eyes only. They're saying that needs to be removed because they are abusing that aspect of it, and that Katie Joy needs to have this information for her defense. But here's my question. Katie Joy has said how many times that she has won this case over and over? She's won. Why all of a sudden now is she saying, oh yeah, let's remove all of this because I need to see every single thing that belongs to Robert Shin, Miranda Derrick, James Derrick, financially, whatever, medically, whatever. It's her right to see it because she's going to need it in her defense when this case goes to trial. But I thought you already won, Katie Joy. She's also asking the courts to change the depositions to being public, to take them off, remove them from being confidential and making them public. And I can only ask as to why. Katie Joy has made a big fuss about how they lied under oath, that they lied during their depositions, that they were coached during their depositions, that Miranda and James looked scared in their depositions because they were being coached, and that they are still brainwashed, and that they are being instructed on what to say and do. So Katie Joy is now requesting that these be released and not be labeled as confidential. I have serious questions as to why. One of my thoughts, and I've been saying this for a long time now, and for those that talk to me behind the scenes, they know this, that I question if there's not a part 2 to this docuseries in the works, that since he was raided, if maybe they're putting something together, and if or when Robert Shin is arrested, then they can put it out. And Katie Joy might be telling them, hey, we need to show how they lied, how brainwashed they were. And when they were having their depositions, it proves that. I don't know. And so I think Katie, one of the reasons why she's fighting so hard to have her hands on all of this, not just for the depositions to be public, but she wants to now be able to see everything in discovery. And again, I think it's the same thing she did for the first docuseries. I even said it then, that I think that she's wanting to have access to this to give to the producers at Netflix. And I'm wondering if that's what this is all about. I hope there's not a part 2, but I seriously question it. And if Robert Shin is arrested, I believe we'll see that coming. And they're probably preparing for that, and Katie Joy is a part of it. But that's just my own opinion. That's just speculation on my part. Do not quote me on that. Only time will tell, right? So this is basically what Katie's response was to the motion for temporary injunction. So, of course, we knew that 7M would now respond to Katie Joy's motion opposing their motion for a temporary injunction. And on October 10th, we saw that filing. And it's good, y'all. It's very good. And as I was reading it, I kept thinking, this seems different. It's reading differently, like almost like it was authored by somebody else. And then somebody that I was talking to brought it to my attention that it is signed by not only Amber Savick, but an associate attorney was included in the signature. So Amber Savick now she might have other attorneys in her firm. I know that she works for herself now, so I don't know how many attorneys she has, but we do know now that at least one, and that one is working with her on this case. And in my opinion, she is very good. So for me, that shows that this is just going to be more of an uphill battle for Katie Joy. Amber Stavik is an excellent attorney. She is great. She knows the law. She's savvy. She's always there. She's always on point. But now she has somebody working with her, and now it just seems like they're even more. Now it's like a dynamic duo, right? Even better, even stronger. You can see that Amber Stavik has her very, very strong points, and this associate attorney working with her has her very, very strong points. Only makes it worse for Katie Joy. But let's look at what Amber Stavik's response was, and we'll go through it very quickly. I'll point out certain things, but with this one, as I usually do, I will have the entire filing here. So if you want to pause and read, you can, but I'm going to go through it very quickly because, again, it is going to say a lot of the same things that their initial motion said. They're just going to obviously address what Katie said in her response. So let's take a look at this, y'all. I think it's great. And therefore, I honestly, truly, y'all, and again, just my opinion, I've tried to stay neutral this whole time. I think this is bad for Katie Joy. But again, as I'm sitting here making this video, their hearing is taking place. And as we know, anything can happen. Anything. This could go any way. But I'm just telling you what I think after reading this motion. Now, this was filed on October 10th, and of course, Katie Joy has made some postings since then, and we will go over those after this. And y'all, it's just crazy because then Jennifer Moore, Katie Joy's attorney, filed something that is definitely worth us looking at more closely. So 7M points out here that Katie Joy's conduct has escalated since the beginning of this litigation and that this court has not previously ruled on it. Now, they did file back in November of 2022 and it was ruled on in February of 23. 7M did file a motion for injunctive relief and it was denied. And then Katie just took off and she hasn't stopped talking since. So they are saying that, okay, her behavior has escalated so much that we're back to that point again where we are requesting and asking the court to please step in, and therefore we filed this motion for a temporary injunction, and here's why. They state that the First Amendment has never protected all speech, and that, obviously Katie Joy, they feel, has gone far beyond what her First Amendment right is. This is what they're fighting here, obviously. And they say that they are not asking the court to suppress lawful expression. Rather, they're asking the court to stop Katie's ongoing defamatory conduct for which Katie has provided zero proof during the course of this litigation, and her defamatory statements are causing all of the plaintiffs and this litigation irreparable harm. They say Katie has escalated her smear campaign by doubling down on defamatory statements and monetizing them for personal gain. Katie's ongoing publication of knowingly false and unsupported allegations while actively participating in litigation is not only defamatory, it is intentional, malicious, and designed to inflict irreparable harm. Katie's refusal to substantiate her claims or cease publication only underscores the bad faith and actual malice behind her conduct. They remind the court that Katie Joy's behavior is disruptive to the administration of justice because she has publicly misrepresented this court's rulings, falsely claiming that this case has collapsed, that Katie Joy has won, and the court got it wrong, and that she won't have to pay $10 million to the plaintiffs. They state that these deliberately false and defamatory narratives are being broadcast to millions and are intentionally designed to prejudice plaintiffs' right to a fair trial. And at the same time, they erode public confidence in the integrity of this court's rulings and the judicial process as a whole. They then say Katie Joy got it wrong, and they have, in fact, satisfied all the Dahlberg factors, reiterating that the relationship between the parties favors injunctive relief, that the balance of harms strongly favors plaintiffs, that plaintiffs have a strong likelihood of success on the merits. And for this, they're saying that, which I find quite interesting, that at most the plaintiffs could be considered limited purpose public figures, and the applicable standard must reflect that narrower scope. So as we know, and we've kind of read through everything before, in order for a defamation case to really be strong, you have to prove actual malice. And with actual malice, it is harder to prove actual malice if the plaintiff is a public figure. And here they're saying, we've never admitted to being public figures. None of the plaintiffs have ever been deemed by the court public figures. Not only that, there are 4 separate plaintiffs in this matter with varying levels of public exposure. A blanket statement that all plaintiffs are public figures is grossly incorrect. And even if, assuming that the actual malice standard applies, which plaintiffs deny, plaintiffs have satisfied it. The record includes substantial evidence that Katie Joy either knew her statements were false or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. And then they say, for instance, Katie Joy falsely accused the plaintiffs of forging legal documents and also stated that Robert Shin had been arrested and is going to prison for sex trafficking. Serious criminal allegations that are demonstrably false based on public record. Defendants now attempt to misrepresent plaintiffs' prior statements, claiming plaintiffs previously asserted they are not under investigation. And I think I must have skipped over that in the last one that we just read, but Katie is trying to say, and she's done it in posts as well, that Robert Shin is trying to hide from this court in Minnesota that he is under federal investigation. But that is not the case. And in these filings, 7M has absolutely acknowledged that Robert Shin is under investigation. They say, in fact, plaintiffs have consistently stated that no criminal charges have been filed. This distinction matters because falsely accusing plaintiffs of committing crimes when they have neither been arrested nor charged is materially false and defamatory per se. Such statements are presumed harmful without the need to prove specific damages. Katie Joy's attempt to obscure that distinction confirms the need for injunctive relief. Further, the entire existence of this investigation is due to the false and defamatory statements made by Katie Joy and her continued harassment and urging her followers to report plaintiffs to the FBI. That's a pretty strong statement there. They continue with the Dahlberg factors and how they've met that. Public policy supports the injunction. And the last Dahlberg factor, that the administrative burden is minimal, stating that they will take over the burden of following what all the BS that Katie Joy decides to do on social media. And therefore, the court themselves won't have to bear that burden and watch everything that she does closely because the parties can do that. Their third part of the argument is that defendants' claim for improper motive is incorrect. And they state that plaintiffs seek injunctive relief because Katie Joy's ongoing conduct is causing serious and irreparable harm. Since the court denied plaintiffs' prior request in 2022, Katie Joy has drastically escalated her behavior. This includes fabricating and publishing false arrest claims, accusing plaintiffs of crimes, disclosing confidential documents, targeting plaintiffs' business partners, and monetizing defamatory content. These actions go far beyond lawful criticism and amount to sustained, unlawful attacks. They reiterate the severity of Katie Joy's posts and her statements and how they've escalated since 2022, and say, if anything, defendants' conduct could be perceived as an attempt to minimize damages in this litigation by destroying plaintiffs' income from their social media following and brand deals. They say defendants' accusation that plaintiffs are trying to, quote unquote, smuggle new evidence into the record mischaracterizes both the law and the record. Plaintiffs are not re-arguing past motions or improperly expanding the summary judgment record. They are responding to defendants' newly published, verifiably false claims that are inflicting irreparable harm. And then they remind in the footnote that the motion is being made 3 years after the initial motion for temporary injunction was made. All evidence submitted in support of this motion occurred after the 2022 motion. They reiterate that they do not consider themselves public figures, that they are private individuals, and that they have not voluntarily injected themselves into any public controversy. But that if actual malice is required, let's say the court does deem them public figures, that they have met that burden anyway. And go back to the statements that Katie Joy made that Robert Shin was arrested for sex trafficking and that he's going to prison, and that the plaintiffs forged legal documents, when in reality, the plaintiffs have not been charged with any crime. They say that these are not opinions or hyperbole. They are specific, damaging, and provably false factual assertions published without supporting evidence. I want to say here that we have to remember that nobody, specifically Katie Joy, has access to these search warrants when they raided Robert Shin's properties. We do not know what these warrants were for. We do not know what he could be charged with if he's charged. Katie Joy can just kind of assume because she can read what's being filed in the LA case regarding the investigation that's taking place, but she does not know for a fact. So when I read this, to me, I think Katie Joy is in a lot of trouble when it comes to the fact that she is absolutely 100% accusing Robert Shin of being a sex trafficker. And also that she is accusing them of forging documents, because I have a feeling that these are two things that they can absolutely prove are not true. I have a feeling that Robert Shin clearly allowed his attorney in Minnesota access to whatever information he has regarding the raid, and that raid had nothing to do with sex trafficking. That whole topic has been brought about by Katie Joy Paulson and Katie Joy Paulson only, and then that was carried on into the Netflix docuseries. I understand there are other people that have talked about Robert and have accused him of sex trafficking. What I do believe and what I'm saying here is that Katie was the loudest voice with the largest platform that disseminated this information faster and wider than most, and that her narrative really caught on. And then other publications took on the story, and then obviously Netflix did a docuseries. Katie Joy is at the forefront of this, and if we remember, she has stated very proudly that she broke this case. I also understand that there are women that claim to be a victim of Robert Shin when it comes to sex trafficking. I am not undermining any victim if there are victims here. But what I am saying is I have a feeling that aspect of it was probably investigated and it might have been set aside as they couldn't prove it, they didn't do anything, or they just dismissed it and they continued investigating other things on Robert Shin, and then the raid happened. All I'm saying is I personally, and don't quote me, I could be wrong, I personally believe that they know as a fact that Robert Shin was not being looked at by the FBI for sex trafficking. Maybe other things. And I also believe that they can prove that these marriage certificates are not forged. Yet Katie is out here screaming at the top of her lungs that they are in fact forged. She's stating it as a fact, and I have a feeling they can absolutely prove that she is wrong. And they even say here that defendants are incapable of posting about this litigation, plaintiffs, and counsel for plaintiffs in a truthful manner. Part 4 of their argument is defendants' threats of fees and sanctions are a baseless attempt to intimidate plaintiffs. They say that their threat to seek attorney's fees and sanctions has no basis in law or fact, and that the plaintiffs brought this motion in good faith, supported by new developments of irreparable harm that was not present when the court denied injunctive relief in 2022. They say, these statements are not recycled claims. They are materially different from what the court previously considered in 2022. They say again that, they are seeking to stop real and irreparable harm, and that this does not come close to the threshold for sanctions under Minnesota law. And they say that the court should reject Katie Joy's improper attempt to intimidate through threats of sanctions, that their motion that they filed is legally and factually justified, and any request for attorney's fees or sanctions should be denied in full. Part 5 of their argument is any defect in plaintiff's affidavits was a clerical error, now corrected, and does not affect the substance or validity of the statements. They say that once plaintiffs acknowledged the error. They promptly resubmitted all affidavits with the proper, quote unquote, under penalty of perjury language in strict compliance with Minnesota law. Part 6 of their argument, defendant's claim of spoliation of evidence is not relevant to plaintiff's motion for temporary injunction. And I think this is very strong here. And keep in mind that Katie Joy didn't bring up the deletion of evidence until her last motion. And I think it falls very flat. And I think that they make it very strong here in proving that Katie Joy has it wrong. And here's why. They say plaintiffs have not destroyed evidence, and there is no law forcing plaintiffs in a defamation suit to maintain their social media presence when they are receiving threats as a result of Katie Joy's defamation campaign. I think that is such a strong statement because Katie was making such a huge deal that they deleted it because they're hiding stuff. They deleted it because Robert Shin made them. And again, and I've said this so many times on this channel, Katie Joy is the one that has claimed Miranda and James are victims. And let's say they are, okay? Miranda and James are victims. Then why would you want them to still be in the presence of hate and threats? Why would you want these victims to endure more pain and more injury? It's because you don't give a shit about them, Katie Joy. You were never advocating for them. You only care about yourself. That is my opinion, and I am firm on that. Because for you to sit here and cry, they deleted all their stuff. Why should they be out there subjecting themselves to all of the hate and, again, threats that support your narrative that you have put out there so strongly and that was backed by Netflix? All of this is put into the public eye after you started covering this case back in 2022. They say that Katie's spoliation claims are legally and factually unfounded and fail under the applicable Minnesota standard. Under Minnesota law, spoliation sanctions require consideration of fault, prejudice, and the availability of lesser sanctions. Plaintiffs acknowledge that they deleted their TikTok and Instagram accounts on or around August 15th, 2025. But that action was taken after the close of formal discovery and was motivated by escalating harassment and legitimate safety concerns, not by any intent to obstruct discovery. There was no spoliation because plaintiffs have retained copies of all relevant social media content and can produce any posts Katie Joy believes are relevant to their claims or defenses. Katie has had the opportunity to make copies of plaintiff's social media presence for the past 3 years. This issue is also not relevant to the motion before the court because plaintiffs are not on trial. Plaintiffs' social media posts are not relevant to claims against Katie Joy. If they are, plaintiffs are happy to provide copies of any posts Katie Joy believes are relevant to this litigation. They say that plaintiffs acted in good faith and that all of the plaintiffs' affidavits clearly articulate that the deletions were motivated by personal safety concerns in the wake of increased online harassment and media attention, not by a desire to interfere with litigation. Katie Joy's narrative omits this critical context and distorts plaintiffs' justifiable and human response to sustained public attacks. Katie Joy's suggestion that the account deletions amount to wholesale destruction of evidence is misleading, and that the accounts removed contained vast amounts of unrelated content, and the deletions were a protective response to sustained online abuse. If anybody watched Miranda and James on their social media, there was nothing about this case. There was nothing about Katie Joy. And I guess what Katie Joy is trying to say is, well, it proves that they were under Robert Shin's control. But it didn't. In my opinion, not even close. And they're saying here that Miranda and James reasonably prioritized their personal safety and mental health in light of mounting threats. That was their priority. They didn't necessarily delete everything. And again, I personally don't think it was completely deleted. I think it's hidden. And I think the way they stated it in their affidavit was they deleted their social media presence. I hope that eventually they can go back on social media, but right now, unfortunately, they can't. And 7M is making a very strong argument as to why, and that Katie Joy is partly responsible for that, if not fully responsible for that. Part 7 of their argument, plaintiffs' confidentiality designations are reasonable and necessary to prevent further harm. Katie Joy's challenge to plaintiff's confidentiality designation mischaracterizes both the February 7th, 2023 protective order and plaintiff's conduct. Plaintiffs have not, quote unquote, blanket designated every document as confidential or highly confidential, attorney's eyes only. Rather, plaintiffs carefully reviewed their productions and applied designations consistent with the protective order and Minnesota law. They go on to say that Katie's claim that plaintiffs improperly designated routine documents as quote-unquote highly confidential, attorney's eyes only, is similarly unfounded. Documents such as tax returns, financial statements, and non-public business records fall squarely within the definition of highly confidential under the protective order. They get more into what the attorney's eyes only designation means and then says that what Katie seeks, however, is not access tailored to litigation needs, but unrestricted disclosure of private materials, which the protective order expressly guards against. Plaintiff's privacy concerns are not speculative. Defendant Katie Joy has a large public social media platform and has repeatedly published content about plaintiffs that triggered widespread online harassment. While she claims not to have doxed anyone, the risk of republication or misuse of personal and sensitive materials is real and ongoing. They then include the post that Katie Joy put out to prove that yes, in fact, she has doxed. And I blocked it out here to prevent from further doxing. So let's go ahead and just read what this post said, since they included it in this motion. Katie says, Robert Shin and his followers, Miranda and James Derrick, sued me for allegedly defaming them by reporting that they weren't legally married. But based on public records and multiple sources, when our reporting initially began, they weren't. Okay, just a reminder, Katie Joy admitted that she got this wrong, that was the only thing she got wrong in her motion for summary judgment. She admitted to getting some things wrong, but only this one thing. And now, after he was rated, she felt like, you know what? I've got this in the bag, so I'm going to retract it and basically admit that I was lying under oath, I guess, and say that no, they weren't. They really weren't married. She goes on to say, shortly after public scrutiny intensified, attorney Shirley Kim filed what appears to be a questionable marriage license in LA over a year after the date the couple claims they were married. Now, I don't think Miranda and James would be fighting this so much if they weren't legally married. Just because this document states one thing does not mean that they were not legally married prior. It just doesn't, especially in the state of California. And again, let's not forget, Katie Joy obtained this document through discovery in this case. And now she's asking for them to remove the protective order. Why? So she can put out all of his tax records? So she can put out all of his banking information? Come on. Like, it sometimes makes me speechless, but, it's Katie Joy. And we don't have the full post on here, but it says, several flags stand out. Miranda's signature on the license does not match previous legal signatures. And I did look at some other legal signatures that Miranda has done, and I think Katie's wrong. Katie's wrong. And I don't think they'd be fighting this so strongly if Katie was right. And then it talks about the address listed is for Shirley Kim. And yes, that's who she apparently doxed. Because they continue on in the motion to say that on July 25th of this year, Katie Joy posted the house address of Shirley Kim on her Instagram profile, along with statements that Miranda and James Derrick's marriage certificate was somehow forged. This marriage certificate was provided to defendants in the course of discovery, and defendants used it to push their narrative of this lawsuit. That is strong, y'all. I think that this is really going to hurt Katie, and I think she's nervous about it. I think she knows she made a mistake. But then again, I don't know. I don't think Katie even recognizes that she makes mistakes because everybody else is wrong and she's right. That's just my opinion. And, therefore, whenever he was raided, she assumed, okay, boom, he's going to be arrested. There's going to be an indictment. And that hasn't happened. And we don't know if it will. It's possible it won't. And, Katie Joy just thought that, woohoo, I won. And so she just continued to defame them, even though she's in current litigation. It does not mean that her case is done because he was raided. It does not mean her case is done because he's under federal investigation. His investigation could go nowhere. His investigation could lead to an arrest. But she doesn't know that. She has no clue. Nobody knows that. Why? Because it's still under investigation. They say that plaintiff's decision to apply attorney's eyes only designations in this lawsuit is a protective measure, not punitive, and fully aligned with the scope and intent of the protective order. And Katie just proved it right here. She's posting documents on her social media that she got through discovery in this case on documents that were not considered confidential or highly confidential, for attorney's eyes only. So she posted it. I guess she felt like because it wasn't under the protective order, she could post it. I don't think the judge is going to think that. I think the judge is going to highly disagree with that. Plaintiffs have followed the rules, applied designations in good faith, and remain willing to meet and confer on any specific concerns. They then provide the link to that post so the judge can see it with her own eyes, and they conclude with this. For the reasons stated above, the court should grant plaintiff's motion for a temporary injunction and reject defendant's effort to misuse the First Amendment as a shield for defamatory conduct. Plaintiffs have satisfied the Dahlberg factors, demonstrating a likelihood of success on the merits and ongoing irreparable harm. Defendants' allegations of improper motive are unsupported, and plaintiffs' affidavits comply with legal requirements, with any technical issues promptly corrected. The spoliation claims are irrelevant and ignore plaintiffs' good faith efforts to preserve and produce relevant evidence. Likewise, plaintiffs' confidentiality designations are narrowly tailored and necessary to protect sensitive personal and financial information. And signed, Amber Stavig, and as you can see, there is another attorney within the signature, and that is her associate attorney, Jacqueline. So there you have it. That is the newest filing from 7M. Now, Katie Joy did file something else. I was going to get into that in this video. I'm going to end it here, though, because what Katie Joy has posted about needs probably its own video. But she did make some posts, and then her attorney filed a motion, and I will get into that in just a second about what that is, and then we will get into it fully into another video. But the day before, or actually the day of this hearing, October 17th, which is now yesterday, because I knew that I probably would not get this uploaded on the 17th, Katie Joy made this post. Help needed. Robert Shin was granted a stay of discovery in a California civil case pending a criminal investigation. Today, his attorney in Minnesota will argue that there is no criminal investigation. She's not going to argue that because they've even said there's a criminal investigation. And this is exactly what this last motion is saying, is that Katie cannot be truthful about the plaintiffs or this litigation, and clearly his case in LA either. They're not going to argue that there is no criminal investigation. Then she says, no one is a target of a federal investigation, and all of my reporting is the reason for Miranda and James Derrick deleting their social media. That's not what they're going to argue. They're not going to argue that either, that there is no criminal investigation, that no one's a target of a federal investigation, and that all of her reporting is the reason Miranda and James Derrick deleted their social media. They are trying to silence me through a temporary injunction. They want to silence my reporting. Please send my legal team all the good energy you have. We must not be silenced. So, lies. And second of all, the hearing on the 17th was for the motion to reconsider. 7M also requested that they hear the motion for a temporary injunction as well. So we don't know exactly what was all heard in this hearing yesterday, because what we do know is that now there is another motion hearing scheduled for December 31st. That's right, New Year's Eve at 9 a.m. We don't know what all was said in the hearing yesterday. We don't know why there's another scheduled hearing. If I'm able to obtain the transcripts then yeah, we might know. Do I even care to do that? I don't think I care enough, but we'll see. Nonetheless, another hearing, December 31st, 2025 at 9 a.m. Now, in the meantime, Katie Joy was making some posts recently, and she was talking about how Robert Shin received a notice of forfeiture, that the United States Postal Service sent him a notice of forfeiture for money seized during the raid on July 25th in the amount of $105,222. And yes, that is in fact the truth. When Robert was raided, they confiscated cash that he had lying around, which apparently was $105,000. And that was seized during the raid. It was part of this search warrant, right? Then he received the letter of forfeiture stating, we are keeping this money that we found. And there are two things that he can do. And we will get into that in another video. Now, the fact that he was sent this letter of forfeiture is absolutely true. The way that Katie is portraying it is not true. The way that Katie is making it sound will happen next is not necessarily true. And that's why I want to do a separate video on this, because Katie Joy found this notice of forfeiture. She realized that this money was seized and but she is saying that this proves guilt, that this proves that there's criminal activity. But in fact, it really doesn't. And I'm not defending Robert Shin in either way. I'm just saying what Katie is saying is incorrect, and we'll talk about that in a separate video. Then her attorney files this motion on the 16th, so the day before the hearing, saying she has new evidence. In my opinion, y'all, this is extremely laughable. They are reaching so far, and it shows pure desperation. But I will get into that in the next video. Hopefully I'll have that out in the next couple of days. Bear with me. Life is very busy. But I will keep you updated if anything else is filed in this case. My guess, and again, this is only just my guess, I don't know what all was heard in this hearing yesterday. I don't know what all was presented. That I do not know. I do know that it was obviously regarding the motion for reconsideration and possibly this motion for a temporary injunction. But there is another hearing scheduled for a reason. So my guess is we will, again, just a guess, we will hopefully see before the 31st a ruling on this motion for reconsideration, which I do not see this judge changing her ruling on the initial summary judgment ruling, but I could be wrong. Anything can happen. Now, Katie is sitting here calling the judge an idiot and saying the courts are dumbasses. So I don't know if the judge is going to take that lightly, but nonetheless, we need to see a ruling on the motion to reconsider, and then we'll get an idea of what's going to happen with this motion for a temporary injunction. And then we'll see if this judge will grant a limit. I don't think she's going to grant it fully, but there could be a limited injunction in this case. But one thing I want to end this with. For anybody wondering what is happening with Miranda Derrick's parents, are they in support of Miranda? Are they still in support of Katie Joy? I was wondering that myself because I don't understand how and this is just my opinion, I don't understand how any parent could support someone like Katie Joy insulting and causing so much damage to their daughter, regardless if they feel their daughter's in a cult, regardless if they feel that Robert Shin is the devil himself. Katie Joy has brought a lot of harm to their daughter, and I don't understand how they can support her. And I thought maybe they hadn't. Well, I'm here to tell y'all I'm wrong, because yesterday under that post that we just showed where Katie Joy was asking for help, stating that they're going to go in and they're going to say that they're not under federal investigation, Kelly Wilking, which is Miranda Derrick's mother, commented under that post stating, "There are no words to explain how confusing this is. Please keep me posted if you can." So does she support Katie Joy doing all the things she's doing? I don't know. But honestly, I'm not even going to say how I feel. I'm going to leave it here. You guys can leave in the comments below how you feel about all of this. As always, I appreciate you being here. I hope to see you on the next one. I also hope to see you in the comments below. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please consider doing so. You can hit that thumbs up, ring that notification bell. It'll let you know if I decide to go live or each time I put out a new video. Have a wonderful day, y'all. See you on the next one.